You were a diversity hire, a checkbox. Did you honestly think you belonged on this floor?
Meredith Vance smiled and dropped the box. Desmond's things spilled across the marble floor of Whitmore Capital. A coffee mug, a stack of notes, a small photo of his little girl.
Pick it up and get out.
Behind her, 4 colleagues burst out laughing. 2 men, 2 women howling loudly. Someone clapped. Their faces shone with giddy delight. Desmond Lockwood did not flinch. He knelt and wiped the photo clean. His eyes stayed calm. He looked at the woman who had just fired him, nodded once, and walked to the elevator. What she didn't know was this. Desmond would make one phone call, and by morning, every person laughing in that room would be gone. Have you ever watched someone torn down for how they looked, while the people laughing had no idea who they were? To understand that phone call, you have to go back 3 weeks, back before the laughter, back before the box ever hit the floor. The morning began the way every morning did. In a small apartment in Queens, Desmond Lockwood stood at the stove, flipping a pancake for his daughter Nora, only 7 years old. She sat at the counter, swinging her feet, humming a song from a cartoon. "Dad, you burned it again," she said. "I did not burn it. I gave it character." Nora laughed. That laugh was the reason he got up every day. For 2 years now, it had been just the 2 of them. Desmond had learned to braid hair, pack lunches, and be at every school play in the front row. He was tired in the way all single parents are tired. He never once complained. He packed her lunch and checked her backpack twice. He tucked a small note inside, the way he did every day. Today it read, "Be brave. Be kind. Dad loves you." Then he walked her to the school 2 blocks away and watched until she was safely through the doors. Desmond took the train into Manhattan. He wore a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbow, and he filled the doorway of the subway car. Tall, powerfully built, the kind of man strangers made room for without knowing why. He did not look like the other analysts at Whitmore Capital. He did not talk like them either. He listened far more than he spoke, and he noticed the things other people walked right past. Whitmore Capital sat 30 floors above the street in a glass tower in the financial district. Inside, everything gleamed. Marble under his shoes, chrome along the walls, screens flashing green and red in every direction. The air smelled of cold coffee and expensive cologne. This was a place where money talked, and everyone leaned in to listen. Watches cost more than cars. Suits cost more than rent. And status was the only currency that truly mattered here. Desmond moved through it all quietly. He arrived early and left late. He brought his own lunch in a paper bag while the others ordered expensive salads. He held doors that no one thanked him for. He greeted a security guard named Earl by name every single morning, because Desmond remembered that people were people. On his first day, a woman in a red dress had glanced at him, then at the elevator. She asked if he was there to fix the printer. Her name was Meredith Vance, a senior partner. She did not wait for his answer. She simply walked away. Near her desk, 4 younger colleagues traded jokes all day. 2 men, Trevor Sloan and Grant Bishop. 2 women, Whitney Caldwell and Blair Ashford. They laughed easily, especially at people who could not laugh back. Desmond said nothing. He had been hired as a contract analyst on a short assignment, and to everyone there he was temporary. Forgettable. A man who fetched files and kept his head down. That was exactly what he wanted them to think. His desk sat in the far corner, near a printer nobody used. On it he kept one thing. A small framed photo of Nora caught mid-laugh, 2 front teeth missing. Each morning he opened the same set of files. Pension accounts, retirement funds for teachers, nurses, and city workers across 3 states. long columns of numbers that most people found unbearably boring. Desmond did not find them boring. He found them strange. The numbers almost balanced. Almost. Every quarter, a small amount slipped out of the teacher's fund and vanished into an account he could not trace. It was never large enough to trigger an alarm. Just a few $1,000s, again and again, quietly disappearing into the dark. So he built a quiet spreadsheet of his own. He tracked each missing figure, each date, each destination code. Slowly, a pattern took shape on his screen. Someone inside Whitmore was skimming from retired teachers a little at a time and betting that no one would ever bother to look. He said nothing. He simply watched, and he wrote everything down. Because Desmond Lockwood was very good with numbers. Better than anyone on that floor could imagine. And the woman who signed off on those accounts had no idea. The woman who would one day drop a box at his feet did not even know his name. Not yet. Meredith Vance still did not know his name. But she had decided on his very first afternoon exactly what he was. The contempt did not arrive all at once. It came the way cold does, one small degree at a time. Whitmore Capital ran on a simple, unspoken rule. There were people who mattered and people who were furniture. Desmond had been sorted into the second group, and no one intended to sort him out of it. He did not argue with the label. He just let them believe it, and he kept his eyes open. So she used him. She called him, "You there," or sometimes nothing at all, just a snap of her fingers and a nod toward the coffee machine. "2 sugars," she said one morning without looking up. "And wipe the rim this time." Desmond brought the coffee. He said thank you, though she had not. He set it down gently, and he did not let his face change. Behind him, he heard a soft laugh. He did not turn around. On his way back, Desmond passed Earl at the security desk. The old guard slid him half a granola bar without a word, the way he did most mornings. It was a small thing, but small kindnesses land hardest in cold places, and Desmond never forgot a single one. They handed him the work no one else wanted. Boxes of old filings to sort, printer jams to clear, lunch orders to fetch in the rain. Desmond did all of it without complaint, because he had done harder things, and because complaining had never once fixed a problem. But he watched. He always watched. One afternoon, a report went to a client with the wrong figures. Meredith had approved it herself, but when the client called furious, she needed a face to blame. She found Desmond at the printer. "You," she said loud enough for the floor to hear, "you mixed up these pages. Do you have any idea what you cost us today?" Desmond had never touched the report. He knew it. She knew it too. He looked at her for a long moment, then said only, "I'll make sure it doesn't happen again." He took the blame that was not his, because arguing would have changed nothing. Meredith smiled satisfied and walked away in a swirl of red. A few desks over, Blair whispered something, and the laughter followed him back to his corner. The 4 of them, Trevor, Grant, Whitney, and Blair, made a sport of him. They spoke about him as if he could not hear. They guessed out loud where he had gone to school and laughed at their own answers. They called him the intern, though he was twice their age. One Tuesday, Desmond was assigned to sit in on a client meeting and take notes. He arrived early, folder ready. Trevor stopped him at the door. "We got it from here, big guy," Trevor said, smiling. "Why don't you go make sure the coffee's fresh?" The others chuckled. Desmond looked at Trevor for a moment. Then he nodded, turned and went back to his corner. He had learned long ago that some doors were not worth forcing. Not yet. Once, a visiting client mistook Desmond for building maintenance and handed him an empty cup on the way out. Desmond took it, threw it away, and said nothing. Behind him, Grant laughed so hard he had to sit down. "He didn't even correct him," Grant wheezed. "That's amazing." Then it was Whitney who found the photo. She was passing his desk when she picked up the little frame, the one of Nora, mid-laugh, 2 front teeth missing. She held it up for the others to see. "Aw, is this your kid?" she said in a voice that was not kind. "Does Mom know you keep her picture at your sad little desk?" Blair laughed. Grant leaned back in his chair. "Bet he's raising her on ramen," he said. "That's rough." Something moved behind Desmond's eyes. He stood slowly, and the whole corner seemed to grow quiet. He was a large man, and when he rose to his full height, people remembered it. He did not raise his voice. He simply held out his hand. "That's my daughter," he said. "I'd like it back." Whitney set the frame in his palm and rolled her eyes. "Relax, it's a joke." Desmond placed the photo back in its spot, angled it toward his chair, and sat down. His hands were steady. His heart was not. But no one in that room would ever know the difference. For the rest of that day, he kept the photo turned toward him. He thought about the note in Nora's lunchbox. "Be brave, be kind." He had written those words for her. But on days like this, he repeated them for himself. Here is what they did not understand. Every insult, every laugh, every snap of the fingers, Desmond filed away. Not out of anger, out of patience. He had spent his whole life being underestimated, and he had learned to turn it into an advantage. Desmond noticed everything on that floor. He noticed which traders lied about their numbers and which ones only lied to themselves. He noticed the nervous junior who came in early to fix his mistakes before Meredith saw them. He noticed the way the whole room bent toward power, like plants toward a window. And he noticed that no one, not once, bent toward him. He drank cold coffee at a desk beside a dead printer, and he built his case one number at a time. Patience, he knew, was a kind of power the loud ones never respected until it was too late. That Thursday, the chance came. Grant was presenting quarterly returns to a room of junior partners. Halfway through, Desmond, refilling water glasses at the back, noticed a number that did not belong. "Excuse me," he said quietly. "The figure on slide 6, the fee total does not match the line items above it. You may want to check it before the client does." The room turned. Grant's face went red. Meredith Vance did not even look at the slide. She looked at Desmond. "Did anyone ask you?" she said. "You pour water. You do not read balance sheets. Stay in your lane and stay quiet, or find the door." A few people laughed. Grant moved on and never fixed the number. Desmond returned to the back of the room and set the pitcher down. Later, Meredith dropped a box of unsorted receipts on his desk. "Alphabetize these," she said. "It's about your speed." She did not need them sorted. She simply wanted him to know his place. Desmond sorted every receipt neatly and left them stacked on her chair before he went home. But he had seen the slide, and the mismatched figure was not a typo. It was the same quiet leak he had been tracking for 2 weeks. Now it had surfaced in the open, where anyone with the courage to look could find it. For 2 weeks he had chased that leak through a maze of transfers. Money left the teacher's fund, passed through a holding account, then a second, then a third, each one thinner than the last. Most people would have lost the thread. Desmond did not. He had read 1,000 statements like these in rooms far more important than this one. That night he stayed late. The floor emptied until only the hum of the machines remained, and the city glittered cold beyond the glass. He opened his spreadsheet. He lined up the dates, the amounts, the account he could not trace. And there, buried under 3 layers of shell transfers, a single name finally appeared as the person who had authorized every one. Meredith Vance. He thought about who the money belonged to. Retired teachers in small towns, people who had spent 30 years grading papers and buying their own supplies, people who trusted a firm they would never set foot in. And someone here was robbing them quietly, in a red dress. The leak was not random. It was careful. It was the work of someone who knew exactly how much she could take without anyone noticing. Someone who had counted on no one in that corner ever mattering enough to check. She had counted wrong. Desmond leaned back in his chair. He looked at the photo of his daughter and then at the name on the screen. For the first time in 3 weeks, he let himself feel something close to certainty. He did not know it yet, but 2 desks away, a security camera had caught him working late. And the next morning, Meredith would ask a very dangerous question. Who exactly was the quiet man in the corner? The question that would end Meredith Vance's career began as simple curiosity. She had watched the security feed twice, the quiet man in the corner, alone at 9 at night, typing like his life depended on it. Temps did not stay late. Temps did not care. So why did this one? She pulled his personnel file next. It was strangely thin. A staffing agency, a start date, a single line for his role. No references she recognized, no history she could dig into. Most temps left a paper trail a mile long. This one left almost nothing, as if someone had been careful. She told herself it did not matter. She should have paid closer attention. The next morning, she called the head of IT into her office and closed the door. "I want to know what he's been doing on that computer," she said. "Every file, every search, all of it." It was not a legal request. There was no complaint, no cause, nothing, but a partner's suspicion and a partner's power. Company policy required a written reason and a signature from compliance. Meredith signed nothing. She simply smiled at the IT manager until he looked away and did as he was told. By noon, they had copied every file from Desmond's machine and laid them out for her like evidence at a crime scene. She scrolled through them at her desk, her coffee going cold beside her hand. Then she stopped. There it was. A single spreadsheet, clean, precise, and utterly damning. Columns of dates, amounts, account numbers, 3 layers of shell transfers, each one traced by hand, all of them ending at the same place. Her name. She opened it fully and read it twice, and with each pass, the room seemed to shrink around her. This was not a guess. It was not a rumor. It was a map drawn carefully over 3 weeks that led straight to what she had spent 3 years hiding. For a long moment, Meredith did not move. The blood drained from her face, then rushed back, hot. This temp, this nobody she had used to fetch her coffee, had done in 3 weeks what no auditor had ever managed. He had found the leak. He had followed it home, and he had written it all down. A man like that was not an inconvenience. He was a threat. Meredith Vance had not clawed her way to senior partner by panicking. She had built her career on a simple skill. She made problems disappear before anyone else knew they existed. A bad trade, a nervous witness, a paper trail. Whatever it was, she buried it, and she smiled while she did. So she made her decision quickly. Desmond Lockwood would be gone by the end of the day. Discredited, escorted out, his files erased, his story rewritten. Just another angry temp who could not handle the pressure, fired for a data breach he supposedly caused. No one would believe a word out of his mouth once she was finished. She found him at his desk just after lunch. She set one manicured hand on top of his monitor and leaned down. She was close enough that he could smell her perfume over the cold coffee and toner. "I know what you think you found," she said, her voice low and almost pleasant. "So here is some free advice for old times' sake. Delete it. Walk away today and keep your mouth shut." Desmond said nothing. He looked at her the way you look at weather. "Because if you breathe one word," she went on, "I will end you. I will call every firm on this street. I will tell them you stole, you lied, you dug through files that were never yours. By the time I am done, you will not get a job counting change at a gas station." Desmond let the silence sit. Then he spoke softly, without heat. "The teachers whose money you took," he said. "Retired people who trusted this place. Do you ever think about them at all?" Something crossed her face. Not guilt. Calculation. She straightened slowly and smoothed her red dress. "I think," she said, "that you just made a very expensive mistake." She walked away, heels clicking against the marble, certain the conversation was over. It was not. Desmond sat still for a moment, looking at the dark screen where his files had been. He did not panic. He had lived too many years and carried too much to be frightened by a woman in a hurry. He thought of Nora, of the note in her lunchbox, of the words he had written for her that morning. Be brave. Be kind. He had heard threats before, from men and women far more powerful than Meredith Vance. Threats had never once decided what he did next. What decided it was simpler. A promise he had made to people who would never know his name, that someone was finally watching. Then, without hurry, he took out his phone. He did not make a call. Not yet. He simply typed a short message to a number saved under a single letter, pressed send, and slid the phone back into his pocket. He had made copies. Of course he had made copies. A man does not spend 3 weeks building a case and keep only one copy on a company machine. But no one on that floor knew that. To them, the danger was already erased. So Desmond folded his hands, and he waited for Meredith Vance to do exactly what he expected her to do. He felt it coming, the way you feel a storm before the sky turns green. The looks first, then the whispers. Trevor and Grant grinning behind their monitors. Whitney texting under her desk, then glancing up to see if it had started yet. Word travels fast on a trading floor, and the word that afternoon was simple. The quiet man in the corner was about to be made an example. Across the room, Earl the guard stood by the elevators watching. He did not know the details, but he had seen enough people walked out of enough buildings to know the shape of it, and something in his old face tightened. He caught Desmond's eye for half a second. Desmond gave him the smallest nod as if to say, it was all right. Earl did not understand. He would soon enough. At 4 o'clock, Meredith Vance walked onto the trading floor carrying a cardboard box. She did not go to his desk. She walked to the center of the floor where the light was best and the audience was largest. Then she set the box down on an empty chair and called for him. "You there," she said. "Come here." Desmond rose and crossed the floor. 50 people pretended not to watch. Every one of them watched. She began loading his things into the box herself, slowly making a performance of it. The coffee mug, the stack of notes, and then last, the small framed photo of his daughter. She held it up, tilted her head, and let it drop into the box with the rest. "Aw," she said. "Are you going to cry now? You just got fired, and nobody in this room will miss you." Then she tipped the box over. Desmond's things spilled across the marble floor. The mug rolled in a slow circle. The photo of Nora landed face up right at his feet. "Pick it up and get out," she said. Behind her, 4 colleagues burst out laughing. Trevor, Grant, Whitney, Blair. 2 men, 2 women, howling loud enough to turn heads 3 desks away. Grant clapped slow and cruel. Their faces shone with the same giddy delight. Not everyone laughed. A young analyst near the window looked at the floor. An older woman by the printers pressed her lips together and turned away. But no one spoke. In a room built on fear, silence was the safest thing to wear. And Meredith Vance had taught them all to wear it well. Desmond Lockwood did not flinch. He knelt down on the cold marble. He picked up the photo of his little girl. He wiped it clean with his thumb, the way he had done 100 times before. His hands were steady. His eyes never lost their calm. He stood back up to his full height, and for one strange second the laughter faltered. There was something in the way he rose, something that did not fit the story they had been told about the man in the corner. He looked at Meredith Vance, and he nodded once, the way a man nods when a long wait is finally over. Then he turned, and he walked toward the elevator. The laughter came back louder, chasing him across the floor. Someone whistled. Someone called out, "Don't let the door hit you!" Meredith watched him go with a small, satisfied smile, certain she had won. She had made problems disappear before. She was sure she had just made another one vanish. Desmond stepped into the elevator and turned around. As the doors slid shut on their laughing faces, he reached into his pocket and took out his phone. Meredith Vance had 30 seconds left as the most powerful person on that floor. She just did not know it yet. The elevator dropped floor by floor, and the laughter above him faded into silence. Desmond raised the phone to his ear. The number he had messaged bore a single letter. R. For Ruth. The line was already open. The person on the other end had been waiting all afternoon for this exact call. "It's me," Desmond said. "It's done. You're sure?" The voice belonged to Ruth Calloway, his general counsel of 11 years. "Once I send this, there is no walking it back." "I watched them do it, Ruth. All of it." He paused. "Fire every one of them, every name on that list, and start with Meredith Vance." "Consider it done," Ruth said. "Welcome to your building, Mr. Lockwood." Desmond ended the call. He slid the phone into his pocket, and for the first time all day, he let out a long, slow breath. Here is what no one on that floor knew. Desmond Lockwood was not a temp. He had never been a temp. He was the founder and majority owner of Lockwood Global. It was a holding company that managed more money than most people upstairs would earn in 100 lifetimes. 3 weeks earlier, Lockwood Global had begun quietly acquiring Whitmore Capital. It was a troubled firm with good clients and rotten leadership, exactly the kind of turnaround Desmond had built his fortune on. But Desmond never bought a company from behind a desk. He liked to see the thing with his own eyes first. So he had done what he always did. He put on a plain shirt, took a contract badge under a staffing agency, and walked in as no one. He wanted to know how the people at Whitmore treated those they believed could do nothing for them. That he had learned long ago told you everything a balance sheet never could. For 3 weeks, Whitmore Capital had shown him exactly who they were. Desmond had grown up with nothing. He had been the man overlooked in 100 rooms like this one, judged before he opened his mouth. He had built Lockwood Global brick by brick, precisely so that no one could ever make him small again. And he had never forgotten how it felt to be the quiet person in the corner. And that morning, while Meredith Vance was deciding how best to humiliate him, the final papers had closed. At 9 o'clock, Lockwood Global had taken formal control of the firm. By the time she tipped his box onto the marble, Desmond already owned the chair she had dropped it on. He owned her office. He owned the very carpet under her heels. She had not fired an employee. She had fired her own boss in front of 50 witnesses and laughed while she did it. It was without question the most expensive laugh of her life. Upstairs, it began quietly, the way real power always does. First, the screens flickered. Every monitor on the floor blinked at once, and a single message appeared in place of the market data. Whitmore Capital is now a Lockwood Global company. Effective immediately. Then the phones started ringing. Then the elevators opened, and people no one recognized stepped out. Lawyers in dark suits. A new head of security. A woman with a tablet who began calmly reading names from a list. The names she read were not random. They belonged to the people who had built their days around cruelty. The ones who mocked, excluded, and looked away. Lockwood Global would keep the honest workers and the good ones. It would not keep the rest. Meredith Vance stood in the center of the floor, still holding the empty box, watching her world rearrange itself around her. "There is a mistake," she said to no one. "There has been a mistake." Her badge buzzed red at the nearest door. Her screen locked. A message glowed on it, addressed to her by name, signed by a man she had called "You There" for 3 weeks. Desmond Lockwood. The four who had laughed the loudest went very quiet. Trevor stood halfway out of his chair. Grant's clapping hands hung frozen in the air. Whitney looked at the door, then at the box, then at the name on every screen, and the color left her face. Blair had already grabbed her coat. There was nowhere to go. Meredith crossed the floor toward the lawyers, her heels loud in the sudden hush. "I am a senior partner here," she said. One of them looked up from his tablet. "You were," he answered, and went back to reading. Down in the lobby, Desmond stepped out of the elevator. Earl, the old guard, looked at him, then at the chaos blooming across the monitors behind his desk, then back at him. Slowly he understood. "Have a good evening, Earl," Desmond said. "Go home on time tonight. Things are about to get loud up there." He walked out into the cold Manhattan air, and he did not look back. Because he had one more call to make. This one was to Nora's school, to tell them her father would be picking her up himself today. And the call after that, the one that would truly finish Meredith Vance, was to an old friend at the Securities and Exchange Commission. By the time Desmond reached his daughter's school, Whitmore Capital was already coming apart behind him. The people whose names were on Ruth's list did not get to finish their day. Security walked them out one by one, past the same desks where they had spent years feeling untouchable. Trevor left with his tie loosened and his face gray. Grant argued briefly until a lawyer showed him a signature and a clause, and then he stopped arguing. Whitney cried in the elevator. Blair said nothing at all. At the elevator, Trevor tried one last time. He said he had a family, a mortgage, that this was not fair. No one answered him. Fairness, it turned out, was a word he had never once offered the man he mocked. Meredith Vance did not leave. She sat at her desk for an hour calling a number that no longer connected her to anyone who mattered. She emailed Desmond twice. The first message was an explanation. The second was an apology. Both went to an inbox that Ruth Calloway now controlled, and neither was answered. She told the new security team there had been a misunderstanding. She told them she was a senior partner, that she ran half the accounts on the floor, that they could not possibly do this. They listened politely. Then they told her to go home and to come back at 9 the next morning to collect her things. Desmond arrived at 8. He wore the same plain white shirt.
Earl was at the front desk, and this time the old guard stood a little straighter and smiled.
"Morning, Mr. Lockwood," he said. "Morning, Earl. How are the knees today?" "Better now." Desmond rode up to a floor that had gone very quiet. People who had laughed at him a day earlier now watched him pass and found they could not meet his eyes. He did not make them. Not everyone was afraid. A few people had earned his attention over 3 weeks. They were the ones who did their work and treated the cleaners like human beings. That morning they received a very different message. Theirs was an invitation to stay and to rise. He simply walked to the corner office that used to belong to Meredith Vance, and he waited. She came in at 9, in a gray suit this time, her confidence worn thin. She had rehearsed something on the way over. It fell apart the moment she saw him behind the desk. "Mr. Lockwood," she began. "Desmond, I hope we can start over. If I had known who you were, things would have gone very differently." "That," Desmond said quietly, "is the problem." She stopped. "You would have treated me differently if you had known I was rich?" he said. "But you should have treated me the same when you thought I was no one. That is the whole point." Meredith's mouth opened, then closed. For once, she had nothing to sell. The woman who always had an answer stood in a borrowed silence in an office that was no longer hers. Desmond stood. He did not raise his voice. He never had to. "You are relieved of your position, effective immediately. But this was never really about how you treated me." He slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. On it was a name she recognized. Her own, at the end of a trail of stolen money. "This is about them, the teachers, the people you robbed because you were sure no one would ever check." The color drained from her face for the second time in 2 days. "Our forensic team already has everything," Desmond went on. "So does a friend of mine at the SEC. You will want a very good lawyer." 2 members of security appeared at the door. They did not touch her. They did not need to. They simply waited while Meredith Vance gathered a small box of her own things. Then they walked her out past the silent desks and the people she had once ruled by fear. The elevator no longer answered to her. She did not cry. She did not shout. At the last second, she looked back at Desmond. She still could not understand how the quiet man in the corner had become the most powerful person in the building. He met her eyes, and he said the only thing left to say. "Have a good afternoon, Ms. Vance." The doors closed. The call to the SEC was not a threat. It was a promise, and Desmond Lockwood kept his promises. Within a week, federal investigators arrived at Whitmore Capital with subpoenas and hard drives. They did not have to dig. Desmond handed them everything. 3 weeks of careful work sat waiting for them. The spreadsheet, the shell accounts, the dates. It was all organized so cleanly that one investigator later called it the easiest case he had ever opened. The investigation moved quickly. Auditors traced every transfer Desmond had flagged, then found 3 more he had missed. Regulators interviewed half the floor. One by one, the people who had sworn Meredith could do no wrong began very carefully to remember things differently. A junior analyst named Cole, the nervous one who came in early, had kept copies of memos. He had been told to shred them. He handed them over without being asked twice. What they found was worse than anyone expected. Meredith Vance had been skimming from the teacher's pension fund for 6 years. A few $1,000s here, a rounding error there. Small enough that no single quarter raised a flag, patient enough that it added up to nearly $2 million. It was money that belonged to retired teachers in small towns, people who had trusted Whitmore with the last safe thing they owned. She had not gambled it away. She had simply taken it quietly and spent it on a life that looked exactly like success. The story broke on a Thursday morning. By noon, it was on every financial channel in the country. One headline read, "Wall Street partner charged in pension fraud." The photo they used showed Meredith in a red dress at a charity gala, smiling, a glass of champagne in her hand. The internet did the rest. She became, overnight, the face of everything people already suspected about people like her. Reporters found the teachers. They put them on camera, one after another, ordinary people describing what the missing money had meant. A delayed retirement, a house nearly lost, a grandson's tuition that had to wait. The country listened, and the country was furious. Then a second story broke, and it was the one that made the whole thing go viral. Someone on the floor had recorded the firing. A shaky phone video showed a woman in red tipping a box onto the marble. She laughed while a quiet man knelt to pick up a photo of his daughter. The caption told the rest. The man on his knees owned the company. The woman laughing was about to be charged with fraud. The video was viewed millions of times before the week was out. People did not share it for the money. They shared it because they had all at some point been the quiet person in the corner, and they had all wanted to see a day exactly like this one. The teachers' faces stayed on the news for a week. So did the video. Talk shows played it. Strangers stitched it with music. Greetings of people watched a woman in red learn in real time that the man she had humiliated could buy and sell everything she owned. It was not kind, but after 6 years of quiet theft, very few people were in the mood to be kind. Meredith Vance fought it at first. She hired the very good lawyer Desmond had said she would need. It did not matter. The evidence was too clean, the paper trail too complete, the public too loud. In the end, she took a deal. She pleaded guilty to securities fraud. She was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison, barred from the industry for life, and ordered to repay every dollar she had taken. The senior partner who had ruled a floor by fear walked into a courtroom in a plain suit. She walked out with a number instead of a name. At the sentencing, the judge said something the cameras caught and the clips repeated for days. He said, "The worst thefts are not the loud ones. They are the quiet ones, committed by people we trust, against people who cannot afford to lose." Then he looked at Meredith Vance, and he gave her the maximum the deal allowed. The 4 who had laughed with her did not go to prison. Their punishment was quieter, and in its own way, complete. Word travels fast on Wall Street. None of them worked at that level again. Trevor sold insurance in another state. Grant stopped returning calls. The industry that had once found them so charming discovered it could get along without them. But the part of the story Desmond cared about most never made the headlines. Lockwood Global repaid the pension fund in full out of Desmond's own pocket before the courts ever ordered a cent. He did not want the teachers to wait years for a settlement. He wanted them to sleep that week. One of them, a retired third-grade teacher named Margaret Ellison, wrote him a letter by hand. She had taught for 35 years. She said the money he returned was the difference between fear and peace. She said she did not know he was rich or powerful. She only knew that a stranger had noticed when no one else had bothered to look. Desmond kept that letter in his desk drawer next to a photo of his own daughter. Some things were worth more than any deal he had ever closed. When the pension fund was made whole, there was no press release. Desmond asked for none, but word reached the teachers anyway, the way good news does. Some of them pooled their money and mailed him a card signed by 42 people he had never met. Others simply told their families that somewhere in a glass tower, a man they would never meet had decided they still mattered. That was the verdict Desmond cared about, not the one in the courtroom. Whitmore Capital did not close. Under Lockwood Global, it became something better. The honest employees stayed and rose. Compliance was rebuilt from the ground up. And in the lobby, where every client could see it, Desmond hung a single line with no name attached. Treat everyone as if they own the building. One day, someone will. As for the man who started it all, he did not give interviews. He did not post the video. He did not need the world to know what he had done. He had a daughter to pick up from school. And that, to Desmond Lockwood, had always been the only headline that mattered. That afternoon, Desmond stood outside a school in Queens, hands in his pockets, waiting for the bell. When Nora came running out, backpack bouncing, she did not know that her father had taken control of a company that morning. She did not know a woman in a red dress was about to lose everything. She only knew that he was there the way he always was, in his same plain white shirt. "Dad, you came early." "I did. I heard there is a girl here who likes ice cream." Nora gasped. "It's a school night." "I know," Desmond said. "Let's break the rules." They got ice cream. They walked home the long way past the park. He listened to every detail of her day, as if it were the most important briefing he would ever receive. To him, it was. On the walk, Nora asked him how work had been. Desmond thought about the morning, the box, the laughter, the phone call that had ended a career. "Long day," he said, "but a good one." She nodded like that made perfect sense, and she took his hand. That was all the review he needed. At home, he made pancakes for dinner because Nora asked. A man who owns half of Wall Street can still burn a pancake and give it character. He tucked a note into her lunchbox for the morning. "Be brave. Be kind." He had written those words 1,000 times. He would write them 1,000 more. That night, after the dishes, Nora asked him why some people were mean. Desmond thought for a moment. He did not tell her about Meredith Vance. He said only that some people are kind because it costs them nothing, and some are kind even when it costs them everything. "Be the second kind," he told her. "Always." Then he turned off the light. Nothing about his life had really changed. He still lived in the same apartment. He still rode the same train. He still remembered the name of every security guard in every building he owned. The money had never been the point. The money was just what let him make sure men like Earl got to go home on time. It let teachers he would never meet finally sleep. The next week, Desmond gave Earl a raise. The old guard tried 3 times to refuse. He also learned the names of the cleaning crew, the ones who came after dark. Most of them had worked in that building for years. Not one partner had ever asked. On his new desk in the corner office he had taken back from Meredith Vance sat 2 things. A handwritten letter from a retired teacher, and a small framed photo of a little girl, mid-laugh, 2 front teeth missing. He looked at that photo far more than he ever looked at the skyline. The skyline, after all, was just glass. The girl was everything. There would be other companies, other rooms, other people who mistook a plain shirt for a small life. Desmond would walk into them the same way he always had, quietly, watching, giving everyone the chance to show him who they really were when they thought no one important was looking. The people who had laughed at him never understood something simple. Desmond Lockwood had never needed them to respect him. He only wanted to see whether they would respect a man they believed could do nothing for them.
They failed that test. But you do not have to. So, here is the part where I stop telling the story and I talk to you for a second.
Real talk. I did not write this so you would cheer when the rich guy wins. I wrote it because almost all of us have been the quiet person in the corner, judged by a shirt, a job, a face. And here is what nobody tells you. You never really know who you are talking to. That barista, that janitor, that new person nobody notices, any of them could be the most important person you meet all year. So be kind when there is nothing in it for you. That is the whole test. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for the stories the world forgets to tell. And be honest with me, when was the last time you were underestimated?